See from my device that it's 10 a.m. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order at 10 a.m. Could we please have our convening statement?
Before we begin, translation services are available free of charge upon request. Antes de que comencemos, servicios de traducción de forma gratuita son disponibles bajo petición. Benton-Franklin Council of Governments was established by a voluntary association of local units of government in 1966 with the vision of providing a forum for improved communication, multi-jurisdictional decision-making, regional planning, and the capacity to serve as lead agency in providing multi-jurisdictional programs. The services provided to the member jurisdictions are outlined by interlocal agreement and can evolve with the needs of the region. BFCOG currently fulfills the following designations on behalf of the Benton-Franklin region: Regional Planning Commission, Conference of Governments, Regional Transportation Planning Organization, Metropolitan Planning Organization, Transportation Management Area, and Economic Development District. The BFCOG Board of Directors simultaneously serves as the governing body for the Benton-Franklin Council of Governments, Benton-Franklin Metropolitan Planning Organization Transportation Policy Board, Benton-Franklin Walla Walla Regional Transportation Planning Organization, and Benton-Franklin Economic Development District. We share this information at the beginning of each board meeting to provide context to the information shared and the actions taken during the meeting.
Thank you. We'll proceed with roll call.
Just a moment, let everybody into the waiting room.
And we'll interrupt the community statements to wait if I was rated. So
Okay. Ben-Franklin Transit, Benton County,
Yep, present.
City of Benton City, Mayor Burton is on the line.
Is online.
Yes. City of Connell,
Present.
Mayor McShane is on the line. City of Pasco,
Charles Grimm.
City of Prosser,
Here, Marcel.
City of Richland,
Here. Todd Samuel.
City of West Richland, Franklin County,
Stephen Bellman.
Port of Benton,
Bill O'Neill.
Port of Kennewick,
Skip Novakovic.
and Port of Pasco,
Vicki Gordon here.
and Washtenaw South Central. You have.
Thank you very much. I'll please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And welcome. Good morning, everybody. I did want to introduce our guest for today. We have Adam Lincoln from the Port of Pasco. He is the Executive Director of the Port and will be providing a first presentation today. We'll go ahead and move on to approval of today's agenda.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the agenda as presented. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on today's agenda? All right, all in favor of approving today's agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, agenda is approved. And we'll now open the floor for any comments from the public. Do we have any members of the public who wish to comment here today?
I do not see that we have any public comment.
If we have no public comment, we'll go ahead and move on to our presentation for this morning.
All right, well, thank you all for the invitation to speak to you about what the Port of Pasco is working on, and specifically the next chapter of industrial development that we're really focused on and that our commissioners have sort of empowered us to focus on is industrial symbiosis. This is something where my predecessor had gone on a trip to Denmark with a group called the Center for Sustainable Infrastructure. They take every year, sometimes twice a year, they take legislators, both Republican and Democrat. They've been really good about it being a 50-50 split on this trip to Denmark to learn about this type of industrial development.
Join the meeting.
That's been happening there for the last 55 years or so. And a lot of it stemmed from the desire of Denmark to be more energy independent. They were reliant on a large portion of their energy supply from Russia and other parts of the world, and that became an issue for them just in terms of being sustainable, but being independent and having their own destiny in front of them. As many of you know that work in development in our region, and as thought leaders, we aren't at a position in our area where we have so much energy that we can't that we are limited by what we have. We have been very supportive of projects like SMRs, and that is definitely the next gen that we are going to be supporting, and that what our vision is going to be in hopefully incorporating that type of development into the business park that we want to create. But I'll go through a few slides and just kind of show what we've been working on and where we're at. There's also a video, so it won't just be me talking at you. You can kind of get an idea of, let's see.
President, let me quick get it, it's in tray.
Small modular reactors, sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
So really, industrial symbiosis is not that different from an industrial park that you would think of today, except for the industries that are there are going to be sharing resources, sharing waste resources with each other, so that it's their outputs or somebody else's inputs. So most industrial processes either have a heat off-putting, excess gas, excess water, something that is going out that could be used as an input for a different type of development or a different part of that industry. But really, you want to make sure that you're driving costs down by sharing these resources and supporting industries that are wanting to be in this development. In Denmark, we saw an example of this where they took a greenfield blank slate. They created they started to create enough of the power generation to keep it off of the grid. And then they also share the resources by creating piping networks and things like that to make sure that the water, heat, whatever the byproduct is shareable between those industries, which is where we see the port playing an integral role. I want to show you this quick video.
Welcome to the Port of Pasco Industrial Symbiosis Park, an ecosystem where industries work together to turn waste into valuable resources. Instead of operating independently, each facility is connected, sharing energy, materials, heat, and byproducts in a somewhat circular system. Everything starts at the farm. Columbia Basin crops help feed the entire ecosystem. Agricultural feedstock and residue collection centers gather crop waste, livestock bio-waste, food byproducts, and organic materials such as corn, canola, camelina, and wheat. The bio-waste is transported to anaerobic digestion and biorefinery systems. Here, organic waste is broken down to create renewable natural gas, nutrients, heat, and usable carbon dioxide. These byproducts are then sent to ingredient manufacturing facilities. These facilities transform the resources into higher value products for food, industrial, and commercial applications. Sugar is supplied to alcohol-to-jet and sustainable aviation fuel facilities. Using sugar and oil, these facilities create sustainable aviation fuel that works in existing aircraft without engine modifications. helping reduce emissions in one of the world's hardest sectors to decarbonize. Within the park, solar and wind power capture and store clean energy, while carbon dioxide from anaerobic digestion supports algae greenhouse operations. The park also includes a small modular reactor that provides reliable 24/7 clean electricity and heat. Together, these systems create an industrial symbiosis network where energy, heat, carbon, and materials are continuously reused. This shared power and heat infrastructure also supports electro-sustainable aviation fuel electrolysis. This facility combines green hydrogen and biogenic carbon dioxide to create synthetic jet fuel with a near-zero carbon footprint. With each new connection and shared resource, the ecosystem grows stronger, making every facility more connected, efficient, and sustainable. By transforming waste streams into shared resources, the Port of Pasco Industrial Symbiosis Park creates economic opportunity, all while reducing environmental impact. Welcome to the Port of
So obviously we have a lot of ag in our region. We have a lot of transportation networks in our region. So we definitely see that we have a location advantage to be practicing this type of development just in general. We think that we've got a state that is going to, well, we know that some of the development issues that industry is facing, especially things that are related to the Climate Commitment Act, that the state, while we don't anticipate that changing anytime soon, given the makeup of the legislature, we want to try and take advantage of that as best we can and make sure that industries that are really looking to site in states that have these kind of policies, that this is one of the ways where they can kind of embrace that, take advantage of the type of development that they're looking to do, and then share resources with one another and make an economic win for our region. Because of the mix of legislators that are supportive of this, we're also seeing more money going into this type of development. I think they're also looking for ways to spend down some of that Climate Commitment Act money, and this is one of those ways where we see trying to take advantage of building an industrial park that is advantageous for our region as well. This is just some of the areas that you saw in the video: RNG, the waste heat, converting wastewater, which you're seeing already happening in the city of Pasco with food processors. And one of the areas that we're particularly excited about is the SAF production. In Walla Walla, there's a company that's looking to get into SAF production, not bio-SAF necessarily. I think a component of it would be bio-SAF. And then in Moses Lake, there's an industry that's doing sort of a test level creation of SAF. It's not major production levels, so we see our area being suitable for a bigger SAF production. A lot of the inputs we have in our region, just from how much ag we have around here, and so much of it ends up being not a value add to the farmer. And this would be a way to really be intentional about making sure that crop waste, things that may not be all of that advantageous economically to farmers, could really become inputs for them that do have a much bigger ROI than they see today. I can talk a little bit about that. So one of the places that we saw was that this development in Kalundborg. This is where Novo Nordisk mouthful has some of their production. They're a massive company. They've worked in this community for a long time. They've created the network of pipes. They've created the network of ability to share between the various industries that are in Kalundborg. And an example of taking an existing location and proving that this model can work there. It took a lot of input from government. They have a lot of they have more pigs in Denmark than they do people. So they have a lot of waste that they can put into these processes and be able to use them for inputs. That's one of the things that they've done. But when you have existing industry that wants to participate and drive their costs down, and you have government that wants to help put in the infrastructure and participate, they've found a really good mix of how you can accomplish this type of development. Green Lab was probably the example that we are most interested in emulating. They had a green field that they curated, that they put in the infrastructure. They've built wind and solar so that they've offset 90% almost of their energy needs for the park. So only 10% of the time are they on the grid for their developments. They're adding new industries there all the time. This is what we would see is buying a property, blank slate, the port would put in the infrastructure needed to then encourage developers to come and build their RNG plant or build their SAF plant, or hopefully a combination of all of the industries that we were showing there earlier. And they'd have some sort of set of covenants where they're encouraged to work together. To share those
meeting.
Apologies, Vicky is traveling by car, and so occasionally her phone is dropping off as she's in and out of service, so that's what that is.
And then this is just covering how we'd like to see our production. We were able to access $250,000 to do a feasibility study that was completed. It showed that there's a lot of potential in our region to be pursuing this type of development. And the board enthusiastically adopted the plan to move forward. We were able to get another grant from the legislature this last session. That's going to be looking more at which industries would physically be here. We're looking for entities that are looking to expand in areas like Washington State that have these green policies. And again, I want to reiterate that in Denmark and for us, we're not looking to do projects that don't have a strong economic impact on the area. It is really the priority is that we are economic developers. If we want to provide the benefits of the community, we also want to take advantage of the fact that Washington State is really embracing these carbon reduction laws. And if we can find that win-win happy medium, that's really our goal. So we have, this is sort of where we're at right now. We're looking at identifying some of the inputs, what industries could be here. We have a longer outlay of time where we're looking at doing some sort of a land acquisition that we know will be part of our next year plus plan. But we're also anticipating this is a multi-year long outlook type of a development. We're just seeing Washington State and Oregon start to make investments in these types of developments. Small investments, I would say. There's going to be much more opportunity to put more money into this from a state and federal government side of investing. So we feel like we're really in a strong position. We look at our peers in states, specifically the ports and economic development organizations, and there's only a handful of us that are as far along as the Port of Pasco is. But it's not like we're not miles ahead. We're inches ahead, and this is something where we want to make sure that we take advantage of whatever competitive advantage we can at the moment. You're also seeing things like Framatome, some of the developments at the Port of Benton. You're seeing Wallula is, Port of Walla Walla are taking advantage of this. And right across the border in Oregon, they're taking advantage of doing this type of development. I think this is just the next generation of industrial development that you're going to see a lot more of this. It's natural. It just is something where you can share these resources, and there's a benefit to industry, and there's a benefit to us as a port to provide the resources to make sure that these types of developments are done efficiently and effectively. This is something that I know this was a sprint to get through all of this. It's new for myself too. This is, and we're 3 years into this at this point. A lot of this has been just talking to groups like you all to start planting seeds that this is the type of development we're interested in. We've been talking to lots of stakeholders, including our PUD, and trying to make sure that they're understanding of this type of development. That's something that they're interested in. They like it because it starts to take the pressure off the grid as much as you can. Now, when you do any development, federal law dictates that you have to have the power available to build whatever the project is. So even if you have an off-grid component, you have to assume that that's going to go down at some point, which right now relying on wind and solar is going to be something that goes down for part of the time, depending on night or wind conditions, things like that. So that's why we really want to invest the time and resources in supporting that SMR component, because that's something that we see is going to be a huge benefit to making sure that these types of developments are up and running with 8 or 9 nines that, at the end of that 99, so that we're up as much as possible and developing as much as possible. Industry certainly expects to be up and running, and we're going to be good partners. That's the type of power backbone that we'd like to see provided to them. So happy to take any questions. I know this is new for everybody, and this was a sprint through everything, but expect that you're going to hear a lot more about this because both Washington and Oregon are investing more time and resources into this. Thank you for letting me just word it on. I know it's a lot.
All right, questions for Adam? Yes, please.
So what kind of staffing or what kind of expertise did you have to look at to make this successful?
Yeah, so we had the Center for Sustainable Infrastructure, they were our main contractor. And then we had subcontractors, which were some of our partners from our trip to Denmark that helped on this. So it was really a team of four, I guess, that we had helped put together our initial plan. Where we are today, we've had four people work on it. One of them was Steve Orley, who retired from City of he retired from Vancouver. Sad part of my past that he moved on from the City of Pasco, but he was one of the people that helped engineer what would it look like? How do you need to connect these industries? And we've put together, or we're working on putting together, I don't know, 4 or 5 different scenarios of which types of industry mix you could get, how you would move the infrastructure around to accommodate those different types of industries. We're early on in that, but it wasn't a huge team, and there's more and more people that are CSI is working to. There's an open period right now for people to apply for money to do the type of study that we just did. I don't think it's closed yet, but it's probably close. The state put out, I think, an opportunity for maybe 8 or so new organizations to go through what we've gone through. So there's, and then I would anticipate that's going to be something that happens with more regularity. So there are more and more consultants who are looking to help with this type of development, which I think is a good thing, because I think if we're all using the same playbook, it's not going to be as advantageous. But regionally, we can use the same playbook because we're going to have the same inputs. We're going to have the same ag that we're pulling from. So it makes some sense. Thanks, Andrew.
Adam, you described a few different opportunities to create resources
Yeah.
or partnerships from the various byproducts like electricity, natural gas, the biofuel. Is there a particular area that Port of Pasco is focusing on or looking to?
I think all of the ones that are in that video are of interest to us right now, and it's really going to be market driven by who's interested in developing here. So we're not really sure yet. Those are all industries that we think can have a footprint here based on the inputs that we have from the ag community. Additionally, we've heard from other parts of the country that have pretty persistent ag waste, that they would be interested in figuring out ways to get us their ag waste so that they could continue to sell it off, do something with it, so that industries that are doing RNG or SAF could still be advantageously located here. And other parts of the country could be sending us that ag waste. So there's a lot of opportunity for inputs at the very least, but everything that was listed in that video are things that are produced immediately in our region, at least in Eastern Washington.
Yes, sorry, apologies for being late. I had to reschedule my entire week next week, so
Oh, goodness.
yeah, a lot going on. So I might have missed it. I don't know if you've talked about it, and if you hadn't, I hope this isn't opening a massive can of worms, but when it comes to the energy, I know that in general, we're trying to get more energy, but is there a specific reason other than just needing more energy production in general, or is it related to this hot topic of data centers that we've been talking about that are wanting to move into this area?
So this did not stem from any data center conversation at all. It really stemmed from an energy independence and then a sharing of resources. So the goal is to take advantage of the industries that are looking to locate in Washington because of policies like Climate Commitment Act, and make sure that there's a business case for them at the same time. So for Denmark, it was all about energy independence, specifically from Russia. And the goal for them has been, number one, business case. Number two, is there an environmental benefit to them as well? They've seen, they have very, very significant carbon reduction goals in Denmark. And so we see this being a good benefit for both industry and following state policies, state philosophies.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure also if it had anything to do with, I can never remember the name because the names are always so grandiose.
Join the meeting.
But it's not Project Warp Speed, it's another one where it's going really fast that the administration has done regarding nuclear reactors. So I don't know if it was also related to that project. Go fast. I should know this because of my other job.
No, for us, I mean, I think we're just, the SMR component is something that we're just uniquely familiar with because of the region that we're in. And I think we see it on a timeline that can be advantageous to this type of development as well. If it's, I don't know, 10 to 30 years, depending on how much warp speed there is input into this, you know. We just see it as the goal is to try and have that energy independence as a piece of this. It's in Denmark, the example that we saw, they're 90% of the time off the grid with wind and solar alone. There are other ways that we could supplement this, but that would be a component of this project at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think what I heard her say is we need to come up with a really cool name for it.
Right. We're gonna put it into ChatGPT. It'll come. Yeah. It's around the room.
You don't go with Project Go Faster.
That's just a starting point.
Workshop it.
Yeah, I like it.
Any other comments or questions? Right, well, really exciting.
Yeah,
stuff.
thank you all.
so much.
Appreciate it. There'll be a lot more on this, and I'm sure your staff will all be talking about it at some point too. So thanks for the opportunity for letting me kick it off.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, you have. Thanks all.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was just wondering, one more thing I forgot to, sorry, Kathy.
All right, now she's on.
Has there been any, or did you mention anything about methane capturing from like some of the farms? Because we do have a lot of farms in this area. So we need recapturing some of the, I don't know of a better word than off-gassing.
Yeah.
But from the animals.
Yeah. And for Denmark, that was a big component of it. So animal waste was a massive component. There, I was saying, there's more pigs than people in Denmark.
Yeah.
So animal waste and animal carcass is even a big thing for inputs for these processes. So
Right.
yes, that will definitely be a component at some point. We're going to partner with as many parts of the industry as we can to see what is the right industry mix. We don't know that until we're in the next phase of our study. So hopefully by the end, we're gonna do some resource mapping. We're working with WSU to help us do some of that as well. So there'll be, we're looking at this as a 10-year outlay of time. So warp speed won't be a good name that we can try and steal. Go fast. We're gonna go medium. I think. We project go medium. We want to do it well. Yeah, there you go. We want to do it right, and we want to learn from We want to learn from those that have been working on this, and so we're really relying on the Danes. We had an industrial symbiosis conference 2 or 3 weeks ago now. The Danish government was there, the ambassador for the US from Denmark was there. We're learning more and more. They invest heavily in the United States on behalf of their industries that are located here already and that are interested in being in the US. So we're looking to form those partnerships and be careful about forming those partnerships and trying to get that investment into our region as best we can. And so far the conversations have been really positive. Washington State is looking at getting into some sort of an MOU. They're not sure what to call it yet with the Danes. So there's going to be more of that happening to try and make sure that we're injecting dollars the right way.
Fair enough. Maybe we can introduce them to some more ways they can eat apples and cherries
Oh,
and
yeah.
potatoes and dried
Great,
meat.
absolutely. It's great. So anyways, thank you all. Appreciate it. Bye, Adam. Bye. Take care. Thanks.
All right, everyone, we'll go on to our next item, which is our consent agenda.
Madam Chairman, I move approval of all 5 items consent agenda shown.
All right. Second, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? All right, all in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any objections? Modifications? All right, consent agenda is approved. On to our first action item, Aaron.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. The first action item you have is ratification of the June 18th executive committee decisions. It's located under this because all of the items relating to MPO stuff. So the decisions that need ratifying are a unified planning work program amendment. I'll do a quick background on each one of these. So with that amendment, we added in the Tri-City Metro Loop as one of our work tasks within the Unified Planning Work Program. And we also added those funds into our Unified Planning Work Program as well. That is something that had to happen before the next item, which is the TC Metro Loop RFP. So the request for proposals went out under our procurement policy. It is not a standard practice for us to have an RFP be approved by the board and then go out, but given the size and nature of this RFP, and it was requested of the board to have it come back to the board before it went out, that is why it was an action item. So that happened, and then the June tip amendments. So as just happened within the last last item under the consent agenda, the tip amendments are commonly approved under that, and as we did not have a board meeting, they had to be approved somewhere, so it was approved in the executive committee.
Everybody, and these three items, we have the attachments with more information regarding those. So these were all approved by the executive committee at that June 18th online meeting. Does anybody have any questions about the documentation provided? All right, do we have a motion to ratify these decisions which were made by the BFCOG executive committee and are requiring ratification by the full board here now?
I move to ratify the time-sensitive decisions made by the Benton-Franklin Council of Governments Board Executive Committee on June 18th, 2026 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of ratifying these decisions, please signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes.
All right, the next item is the traffic count program, and Tanner will be presenting on that.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, so we are kicking off the biennial effort of the Regional Traffic Count Program. It was first launched in 2016. We've done it in 2018, 2021 for COVID, and then 2024. It consists of collecting data on vehicle volume, vehicle classification, and vehicle speed. And it is collected by the bidirectional pneumatic tube counters, which you can see in that photo there, the little stripes you drive over, and it's done midweek, so Tuesday to Thursday. Next slide, please. And so this year we are collecting rural sites because we do have streetlight data for the urban areas. That's at approximately 220 locations, and that'll be in Benton City, Connell, Prosser, and then Benton and Franklin counties. We are scheduling to start collecting data, or the consultant is, in August, early August, and it will end by the end of October. And we will make sure to collect that data while harvest is in season and avoid any holidays or inclement weather. Next slide. And with that, we released a request for proposals on June 7th, and we accepted submittals through July 7th. We received a total of 2 proposals. Both were very qualified, but staff met, which comprises of the proposal evaluation committee, and we all averaged the scores out. We scored them based on the criteria that was in the RFP, and that said, we did have IDAX Data Solutions that received the highest overall score. They have collected data for us since 2016, so we're going to continue to move forward with that. Next slide. And in front of you is the proposed motion to enter into a contract with IDAX for the 2026 Regional Traffic Count Program.
Do we have a motion to approve this contract?
I move to approve to enter into a contract with IDAX Data Solutions for the Benton-Franklin Council of Governments 2026 Regional Traffic Count Program as presented.
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or any discussion on this matter? All right, all in favor of approving the contract with IDEX Data Solutions, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We'll move on to the Federal Transportation Reauthorization Basics Act.
Yes, all right. So this is about a letter of support we're asking from the board. So just as a quick background information, the current Infrastructure Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, expires at the end of this federal fiscal year, which is September 30th. There has been text come out about the Basics Act, and what we are asking is to have information from the Basics Act be included in the reauthorization of the next Transportation Act. So that is underway right now. And why you might be asking that is, so there's some big organizations that are listed up on the board that are in support of the Basics Act, such as AMPO, which is the Association of Metropolitan Planning Associations, the National League of Cities, the National Association of Counties, the National Association of Regional Councils, and the National Association of Development Organizations. So what is so great about the Basics Act? So the Basics Act, it's putting more power back in local and regional governments. So there is increased flexible surface transportation block grant funds. So for reference, later in one of my reports, I give the monthly update on the obligation authority status. That is how much surface transportation block grant funds we get to be able to give to the, or give is a strong word, obligate, pass through to the local jurisdictions. That will be increased by about 7.5%. So more funds for locals to do transportation projects. Next is local access to bridge funding. So there will be increased access to infra grants and funds, making it easier for local jurisdictions to be able to receive bridge funding and be more competitive in the process. Third is increased safety funding with local access. So there's going to be an increase in funding from for locals from 21% up to 22%. So it's I know it only sounds like 1%, but however, over the big $1 billion budget, more funds come to locals. 4, reinforces local and regional project selection. So within language for the Basics Act, it is reinforcing that federal dollars will be passed through to locals more than just staying at the state. Nothing against you, Brian, but that's just. So it's putting more funds to the MPOs and the local jurisdictions for funding projects. And then last is strengthening planning capacity. So the federal cost share is going to decrease, or excuse me, it'll increase from 80%. So right now, when there's a federal project, there is either a local match of 13.5% or 20%. For this, it is going to switch from it being 80% federal to now 90% federal. So it is decreasing the amount of funds that the locals will have to spend as their local match. As a quick sidebar, just a reminder to everybody, you can use toll credits for that local match a lot of the time, and it covers that 10%. So I just wanted to put that out there for you.
Join the meeting.
But that is what the Basics Act is. We want the provision, we want this language to be included in the next reauthorization that is taking place right now and through the end of the year.
A couple of things I would add for that, Aaron, is just that, you know, there are additional bills and legislation that are all swirling at the moment. It is nearly guaranteed that there will be a kicking the can down the road before reauthorization actually happens. But the elements of this particular bill, when it comes to how MPOs function and just making that shift, what was shocking to me to find out in researching this is that right now of the federal transportation funding, 16% actually trickles down to the local level of the entire pot. So these provisions, if they were all enacted, increases that to about 22 to 24%, which is a huge swing. And the other real emphasis that Aaron kind of spoke to really specifically, but in the broad text is that under IIJA, a lot of the funds went into competitive grant funding programs. This one is trying to shift that to be more formula funds that just automatically trickle down to the local levels at a higher rate, so that you're not having to try and compete under a competitive grant to get to some of those dollars, but a larger amount will just come down to be part of the overall process. So that's part of what really makes this appealing. So this is an opportunity for us to submit just a letter of support that says, yes, as MPOs and communities, we support that idea, understanding that this is just the beginning of what will be a lengthy process. There has been language that has come out under the Build America 250 Act, that in that particular bill has incorporated several of the elements from the original House resolution, which was encouraging to see, but lots of debate will still continue.
What is the method by which it comes back to the local communities? If not through grant access, does it come to the counties? Does it come to the cities themselves? How do smaller jurisdictions access those funds?
It would, my understanding from the things that are being circulated right now is, I'll use Prosser as the example of, so right now Prosser gets funding through the urban small is what you're categorized at. So that pot would then grow by 7.5%. So it could, I think right now you get about like a 250,000, I'll say annually from, or is that, we'll just use that number. So then that would increase by 7.5% each year. So
and those funds are not something we have to apply and make a case for. It's just a matter of making a decision about which projects we want to apply those funds to.
correct. That would, it's like in our call for projects process. So Prosser is the only urban small, so you collect that entire pot. If there does become another city, then that's different. But your pot would then grow, so then you'll apply for them, but it is at a regional level rather than having to apply at a state level or a federal level for those projects.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm just wondering, because when you were talking about the highway safety improvement program, so I was just looking, reviewing the section by section that you had on there. And it's saying in the section by section that was in the attachment, that this would, section 6 would strengthen local and regional access to safety funding by requiring states to sub-allocate 25% of HSIP funds. So when you were saying that 22 to 24, is that an additional, or was 25 an estimate or rounded number?
Different. So
Okay.
what Michelle was referring to is, so like all of the transportation dollars that collect nationwide, currently 16% of all of the funds come back to the local jurisdictions. That number is going to be increased to 22 to 24%. So
Okay.
that is, that's outside of the HSIP funding at the state level.
Okay,
And I do want to be clear, not is going to. This bill proposes that that happens.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. I don't want to get anybody real excited yet, but.
Right. So, and then, it was also saying that, apportionment changes in section 3 of this bill ensures that the new sub-allocation requirements do not take away from safety funding available to states. That's separate than what you were talking about with the money that would go from the Department of Transportation to us? Or is that the same money? It's just, the same money would go to the state, it's just that the smaller municipalities would be able to have more access rather than going through DOT? I guess I'm not understanding that part.
The way, and I could be interpreting this wrong, but the way that I interpret it is like, so using Brian as the example of, so Brian has safety projects he has already lined up. If there is going to be an increase in fund, if there's going to be a change in funding, it's making sure that whatever projects the states already have lined up do not get changed. So because they have their own requirements that they have to meet for the feds. So as our pot is growing, we still have to make sure that the state's safety projects are going to be allocated out.
Okay. So, but in essence, we are not going to be taking any money from DOT that they already have allocated and needed.
Right.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay.
The backlog in our safety program is so huge. There are very few projects that are actually being constructed in the safety thing.
Oh. You better go.
You know, magic money machine.
Yeah, yeah, start growing those money trees.
Yeah, I know.
So will you have less control then to be able to cover that backlog if this passes?
No, I don't think so. I think it'll still guarantee the projects that we have will happen. It's just there'll be more money that'll go to the locals. But you gotta remember too, the federal highways takes their cut before anyone gets their money. So that's a substantial draw down.
I mean, yeah, I think that when you look at, you know, like when I read, wow, only 16% of the budget actually makes it down to the local government level. You know, that felt like a very small amount of money, but you know, considering you do have federal highways and federal transit and all the state DOTs and all of those entities that everybody, you know, has their share of that lion's share pot. So again, for me, I think the part that was just more encouraging is that shift from without changing who's getting funding where, if all you did was shift funds from those competitive grant programs into more of a formula distribution, trickling those dollars down to benefit more versus competing for a few larger projects nationally. You know, that would ultimately be a benefit. Flip side of that, of course, is that, you know, when you have a massive project, those extra pennies are, you know, they help a little versus some of the bigger grants help you, you know, make a big step forward. So there's excess help.
Is the idea that there's savings in just having less labor and time intensive like management of all of these grant applications?
I think that's a byproduct of the argument is, you know, less effort to administer that kind of a program versus just having a formula. They won't go away. They'll still be there. It's just a percentage is kind of what they're talking about.
We'll get away from competitive, because especially here on the east side, so it's more formula that. Yeah, right.
I think that it's definitely probably better for federal employees that would have to manage these, seeing as the numbers have significantly been decreased, so less on their plate as well that they're having to do to manage these programs. So I'm kind of curious, and this may not entirely be on topic, so please let me know if it isn't, but related to some of this, would it be beneficial if this passed for more municipalities to do things like with what West Richland did with SR 224 to where it would be on the municipality rather than the state, or is that a separate topic?
Separate.
Okay, that's fair. But in the end, this is something that still hasn't passed.
Which is proposing a letter of support from
Right.
BFCOG to.
Right.
Yeah. This is just to be able to show support. I
Fingers
know,
crossed, big hopes for
a
it.
month or so ago, I'd had a conversation with Ashley Stubbs with Newhouse's office. Just talking about specifically what STVG looks like for us and how much funding comes into our region versus just what our top 10 projects cost. It's like just that little bit of a shift, you know, can make a huge impact. And so, yeah, I think this is just an opportunity for us to be able to be part of the conversation versus just waiting to see what happens. Ultimately, we'll still have to just wait and see what happens and respond accordingly. But
Which parts aren't included in Building America 250?
oh, it's super complex. There's elements of all of this, and the percentage of increases in the last version that I saw were a little bit lower than what were included here. Some of the larger grant funding projects were still proposed. But yeah, there's so much horse trading at this stage of the game and at the national level. It's a little challenging to stay right on top of all the nuances, but we figured at this point, at least if we could voice support for that original House resolution, especially given the number of national organizations representing local governments and transportation and development that all agreed that they could put weight behind that. That was a really strong signal about the value of what was included there.
And Representative Newhouse is also in favor of this. He's just needing some extra support.
I can't speak to whether he's in favor, but he is now aware that it's something that that we felt like was worth looking at.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve this letter of support for the Transportation and Basics Act?
I move to approve the letter of support for the Federal Service Transportation Reauthorization, supporting inclusion of key provisions within the Basic Act, HR 7437 as
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. And any opposed, same sign? All right, motion to submit this letter of support passes. Our next action item is related to the PWEDA fund and VITA sponsorship.
Yeah, so this action item is the reason that your agenda says amended. We sent out the original agenda on Friday, and then of course on Tuesday, we got information about this particular event. So the Washington Economic Development Association is hosting their summer conference in Tri-Cities in August. So many of our local governments and partners will be participating. I know I will be participating on a panel discussion with the new Secretary of DOT and others to talk about transportation and economic development. So they were seeking sponsorship to support the hosting of that event. So the sponsorship is $2,500. It does meet our eligibility for PWEDA funds and is a relatively small amount compared to what we have available in the fund there. It does support local government and economic development, professional development. So but in order to spend PWEDA funds, we do need board authorization to be able to do that, so.
Do we have a motion to approve the use of these funds as presented?
Move to authorize the staff to expend $2,500 for VITA sponsorship.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign? All right, motion passes.
What was the date of the conference actually?
It is August. Is it on my report? I really didn't put it on the report. I will double check.
So I'll probably have
Every check.
notes together.
I'll
Sorry.
make sure you get that information.
But I have.
Oh, 4 through the 6th.
4 through.
Yes, so it's coming right up.
Couple of weeks.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, and so as we mentioned earlier, grants are not going away. And so our next action item is related to access of grants for our local partners here.
Yes, so we have 2 action items related to our Grant Navigator program. So the first was that the board originally approved a 2-year pilot to hire a grant navigator and start a program with the intention of supporting our local jurisdictions in being able to identify, prepare for, and submit applications for funding for infrastructure and other related projects. So Kristen's 2-year anniversary is actually at the end of this month. So she has been on board with us for 2 years. We do have the role planned out through the end of this calendar year. But as we're preparing for budgets and other things for the fall, it's now time to have that conversation and say, was our pilot successful, and is this a program that we want to continue? So the pilot objectives were to demonstrate member demand, expand grant development capacity, improve awareness for funding opportunities, strengthen regional collaboration, and identify sustainable long-term funding. And we do feel that all 5 of those pilot projections have been achieved during the 2-year ramp up of this particular program. So looking at results from 2024 to year to date 2026, We have worked specifically with 10 jurisdictions. 18 grant applications were submitted. Now, I will say that, as you know, Kristen gives a report every month to the board, and the number of meetings, webinars, NOFOs submitted, all of the background work that goes to the point where she can meet with a jurisdiction and talk strategy and determine whether they want to submit an application, and then get to the point of actually finessing that and submitting. It is an inverse triangle to how many of those actually get submitted. So 18 applications have been submitted. Those grants have requested a total of $15+ million combined for assorted projects. There have been 136 different funding opportunities shared over that amount of time, 54 letters of support for various applications that jurisdictions might have been submitting with or without our direct intervention. And we have a TBD on the millions of dollars awarded, because we are pending confirmation. We do have one grant application, and maybe mayor from city of Benton City knows something yet, but they had one application that it got to its final level, and I think we're just waiting to hear if they were successfully awarded funds for flood remediation and planning programs, which was huge, and was probably the largest activity that Kristen was involved in with the program. So assistance has been provided at least the basic grant research level of looking into something and scoping its potential related to a specific project. For nearly every jurisdiction, Port of Kennewick is the only one we haven't actually had a single introduction on. Everybody else has had some level of grant research performed related to a particular project. You can see Benton County, City of Kennewick, Benton City, Connell, Port of Pasco have all engaged. Oh, also BFT, City of Mesa, have all engaged in some level of funding strategy discussion, and then actual applications that were to some level crafted and engaged with or by Kristen. There were 6 out of Benton County, 1 for City of Kennewick, 2 for Benton City, and 2 for City of Mesa. There are a couple of them that have asterisks that those were municipal collaborations. So one of the grant applications was related to Mid-Columbia libraries, and one was related to the BRAVE program under City of Kennewick, which included multiple municipal entities that were involved in that. So there has been, I think, a very strong, if not slow to get the ball rolling, engagement with the jurisdictions. And so we feel like that this is absolutely a program that we should convert and retain. So in terms of regional value, we really talked about having that expertise. In fact, we're to the point now that Kristen is having to turn away calls from people who are not members of our municipal government community wanting support, who have heard about the program, heard about the work that she's doing. Whenever she has information about grants that might benefit someone else, you know, she still sends that out to everybody, even though she may not have the ability to work directly with them on their application. She's also been contacted by a couple of other organizations who would like to do something similar and hadn't really seen anybody doing the kind of service that we were doing. So they wanted information about how that works. In terms of financial stability, the board originally allocated us to use $100,000 out of our PWEDA fund to pay for this pilot. As it turned out, we did not use a single dollar of those funds. A couple of things happened during the pilot. One was that we had access to our ARPA funding from the 2 counties that helped to offset the need to use those PWEDA funds. The other was that we had made the shift where when we brought the grant navigator on, we had another economic development role on staff. And that role was being underwritten by our partnership planning funds from EDA. When we did not backfill that position and received verification from EDA that our grant navigation activities were in fact eligible uses of the partnership planning grant funds, that was able to actually offset that position. So we were able to have some staffing changes that allowed us to work within largely the budget we already had existing. So going forward, we've done the analysis, and between the partnership planning grant and the match for that grant, which are part of our regular operating funds, and then the interest that is being earned on our PWEDA fund consistently due to the large amount of dollars that are sitting in that fund. Between just those two sources, it is enough funds to maintain and pay for the full-time staffing position to continue to offer this as a program.
So we
The
do not
next,
need to make any changes to our budget,
no, we can continue in just our current mode of operation. There is another action item that we'll talk about after, which is the potential for fee-for-service revenue. That is not necessary for us to keep and maintain the staff position as things sit today. So that's a kind of a separate conversation.
So we have this 2-year program, which has been a pilot program for a grant navigator, and then we are now looking to seek approval from the board to make this pilot program a permanent position. And the source of funding for that position is was as described, is available and can maintain itself year after year from our current funding sources. Any questions? Yes.
Yes.
Can you go back to the original slide on this item? That one right
Yeah.
there. So we've actually done 18 grant applications in the last close to 24 months that's actually gone in.
Yeah, so 18 applications that Kristen was specifically involved in the creation and submission of the application. So there have been many other efforts that either local governments did completely on their own, and maybe we just submitted a letter of support. For example, we had 54 of those. But the ones that she specifically did intervention on the application itself to some degree were 18.
So have any of the 18 been granted?
Not yet. The one we're waiting on is the city of Benton City. And I think in terms of evaluating the success of the program, the primary metric, at least in my opinion, was creating more at-bats for those competitive grant opportunities. They are in fact competitive. And what we had been seeing prior to Kristen being here is that just due to the capacity of the staff at the jurisdictions, they might not even attempt to submit an application because they didn't have time to do the background research or even figure out if they should consider an application. So when you think about those initial just grant research conversations, they may or may not have resulted in an application, but it did result in a consideration of, would this be something we could do? And sometimes there's value in just knowing whether you should or shouldn't put energy into something. So while we are still waiting with bated breath on, somebody to get some money so we can celebrate that, the fact that we were able to help 18 applications happen that may not have previously is what we've considered to be successful. Yeah.
So the position has been paid through ARPA funding
In
up
its
to this point.
in its first year, it was underwritten between with ARPA funding and the partnership planning funding through EDA.
And
So
that's
both of those.
state.
Federal, that's our federal economic development grant. We received that grant consistently since the late 80s. So that's really our funding to produce the SEDS to be an economic development district. And so we've always paid for one full-time-ish staff person out of those grant funds. And so this is really just replacing what was a staff position that just worked on the SEDS and economic development. And instead, what we're saying is our grant navigation is largely our contribution to economic development as an entity, which frankly answered some questions for us. It's always been kind of a what's the COG's role besides producing the SEDS, which as a planning agency that, you know, that's a planning document, that's what we do, but how else do we engage in the bigger economic discussion? This is a real concrete and unique way for us to say, yeah, this is how we do that.
You go to that next slide.
Yep.
Maybe so was the next one. So going forward, we get 150,000 in the PPP grant. And then the 52,000 is interest on the account.
Yes, so our PWEDA account currently has about $1.4 million in it. So that $52,000 is a very conservative estimate of the annual interest on that account.
Okay, and what is the position cost?
Fully loaded, the position is shoot. It's right about 160, but part of that budget also includes indirect on those dollars. So it's not just the straight fully loaded staff salary, but also an indirect rate to help cover overhead as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, great question.
Do we have any information, sort of going back to that first slide? Is there any information regarding the results of the letters of support or the results of the funding opportunities shared? Is there any way to be able to collect that feedback?
You know, that's an effort that we're working on. How do we get the jurisdictions to let us know? Were you successful? Did it happen? That's been a question we've been trying to get our arms around for a long time, because of course letters of support aren't new. We've been doing that for a long time. But it is sometimes challenging to get the feedback back on the other end. Did you get the money? So that is something we're working on.
With this, I know I'm kind of looking ahead a little bit at the next one, but it made me wonder if and when the funding requests get awarded that we've applied for any of the municipalities that have been able to use Christian service. Right now, as is, would we be able to get help with post-award grant administration, or is that currently not something that we can give with the current money we have for it?
Right now, it would depend on the award and the amount of administrative burden would be required. And that may or may not be filled by the grant navigator specifically. Post-award support could end up being something that I worked on or Alexis worked on in accounting, where you're talking about reporting and drawdowns. It all depends on the complexity of the grant. So at this point, we haven't had anybody come and say, hey, could you help us?
Right.
But we could definitely see the potential for that to happen. So yeah, we're gonna talk about that a little bit more under the next action item.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because when I've talked to staff a lot about, hey, you should talk to Kristen about grants and all that. One of the big things that I keep getting as pushback is, yeah, but if we get it, we're still gonna have to do the administration of that grant, and that takes a lot of time.
It does.
But if that's something that could be helped with BFCOG assisting with that, then that might significantly change the amount of grants that we might be able to apply for.
Very true. Very true. I don't know if Mayor Burton is on the line, and I know he is the one individual that currently in the meeting that has worked quite a bit with our grant navigator program and with Kristen. I don't know if Mayor Burton wanted to add any input about their experience.
In my opinion, this has been absolutely critical for some of the things in our community, considering our financial challenges the staff expertise, the number of staff members we have to address this. And it is highly appreciated. And I have great gratitude for the staff at Benton-Franklin Council of Governments for their efforts and their hard work in helping our community.
Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any examples or any anticipation that a city would be able to, I suppose, substitute the use of these services for their current contracts with outside grant assistance?
I don't know. I mean, generally, I think that the governments that are already contracting for grant assistance directly either already have some financial capacity or the scale and volume of grant applications that they're going after kind of warrants that already. So it might be difficult for us to say we could, sub in for that with one individual, trying to serve so many entities. Already, like I mentioned, we're having to kind of protect Kristen's time about, our members or who we do this work for. And gosh, we're really sorry that you also need help, but we have to keep that capacity contained. Yeah. So it is, of course, although 2 years sounds like a long time, I think it probably took the better part of the first year to just get people thinking about that this was an opportunity that they could take advantage of, and to get into a rhythm of how do we communicate, who do we communicate with. Timing is also an issue, so I think a lot of that background research might turn into, this is a funding opportunity that would be great for your project, but you are not ready and the time frame isn't enough that we can get you ready to submit this time. But also many of those are cyclical, so we can kind of put a pin and say, okay, when this cycle comes back around, we'll be able to work on it a little further down.
Yeah, I know that it definitely, I think, took a little bit of a lot of prodding to get staff to realize, hey, there's this other person here that we could use as a resource. So I definitely would agree that the build-up time of actually thinking of it as a normal part of the process for looking at grants, I think, should also be included in looking at the numbers that we have currently.
And just counting on that it's going to be available,
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we have a proposed motion for recommendation of a permanent program.
I move to approve the motion as presented.
That was simple, I'll second that.
A motion and a second. All in favor of approving recommendation for this as a permanent program, please signify by saying aye.
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 And all right, and any opposed?
Nay.
All right. Thank you. All right, the motion passes. And related item.
Yes, related item. So this one I'm going to preface right up front that says, we have this as an action item. We have made a staff recommendation. However, this conversation can go either way depending on the will of the board. I do not have any strong emotional attachment or heartburn, whichever way this conversation goes, but I feel like it was worth discussing now while we're discussing the longevity of the program. And so that is the idea of instituting an individualized fee-for-service schedule for the Grant Navigator program. What we learned through the pilot program and in actually digging in and working on the applications themselves versus the base amount of services that are available to everybody all the time, which is tracking and distributing those notices of funding opportunity, sitting in on the webinars to learn more about what it takes to apply, having those strategy conversations about what are people seeking funding for and how can we be looking for things that might be a good fit. All of those things continue and are available regardless to everybody. But what we found, and if you had a chance to look at the fee-for-service proposal that was in the packet, level of support when it gets to that application level really fell into 3 different levels of time and complexity. One was project exploration, which is generally, you know, up to about 4 to 6 hours of time. And that's where really researching very specifically funding opportunities for a specific program. We're talking about scoping, we're having very detailed meetings, assistance to gather project information and data, that kind of thing. The next level is the actual application development support, and that could be up to about 15 hours of time, where you're really multiple planning meetings, assisting with actual portions of the applications, researching and helping to write project narratives, budget review assistance, reviewing applications that are being prepared by somebody else. Again, that time, 10 to 15 hours it could take to work on one of those projects. And then level 3 is really a comprehensive grant partnership. So that'd be up to 25 hours. I would say that the city of Benton City's floodplains application fell into this level 3 in terms of the amount of meetings prepared for. That was a multi-level application process, you know, took a significant amount of time. The actual submission, management, all of those pieces. And then level 4 was listed in the report as well, which is the post-award grant administration. Could be a service. It's not something that we've had anybody come to us to have a need for, but Kate's right, that is a natural kind of progression, that there could be a place where that's needed. The reason that we go back, please. Thank you. So as I mentioned, when we think about the idea of a fee for service, the base amount or the base activity that could just be included for members all the time that we're paying for, we have the staff person that's here, is the notifications, grant research, initial project consultations, funding strategies, the workshops and training and all those pieces that to just help bolster people's support. Individualized services that could be fee-based really fall into what's the point where we are now providing in-depth service to a particular jurisdiction singularly. So the actual applicating writing, the comprehensive project support, project specific grant development. Part of what we're thinking about, or why we would consider recommending an individual schedule, of course, is that it does ensure equitable access for everybody. There's the things that everybody has access to all the time, and then the amount of staff time that is being dedicated to the support of a single member entity. We set up this potential schedule to be predictable project costs. We went through and took what was the fully loaded staff time plus an indirect average amounts of that it took to work on the different levels of projects, and came up with a flat rate fee for each of those levels. That's actually frankly less than you would have to pay to contract with a typical grant writer, but to make it predictable. But it would also help with long-term program sustainability. So going back to Kate's question about what if we had somebody who wanted us to help with grant administration, you know, there will come a time when either the funding sources that we have identified today and over the next few years, are those enough to continue and maintain the program? Is there other staff support that needs to be brought in for accounting or other things to help? So charging a fee for service helps add revenue to program retention over time. So again, as we kind of talked about a proposed fee for service schedule, level 1, that up to 6 hours, pretty basic, but project exploration, really talking strategy, for a particular project, up to 6 hours, $500. Level 2 application development, I would say the majority of our grant interactions fell in between 1 or 2. This last go around, up to 15 hours, it'd be about flat $1,500. And then the level 3, that really in-depth kind of project, up to 25 hours, $2,500. Any post award would have to be individually negotiated on that, hourly plus indirect rate, because there's just way too much variability for what that could or couldn't include, and whether we could or couldn't have the capacity for that. If we were to adopt a fee for service schedule, the scope of work would be pre-approved with the jurisdiction, no surprises, you know exactly what it's gonna cost. If it turned out that something was more complex than what we worked into these averages, it would be that hourly plus indirect rate beyond that up to, and that would be pre-approved with the jurisdiction at that time. So again, this can be a topic of conversation. This could be something that we say, great, this is something we want to think about maybe later. Let's just let the program roll for a little while longer and get some more information and come back and talk about it. It might be that board members come back and say, you know what, we really appreciate that this program is just broadly available. We're paying for the staff time. That's good enough. And if the people who use it, that's great. We're not worried about fairness of any one jurisdiction using things more than another or anything else. All of those are great. And I really have no preconceived sense of how you as a board might feel about this as a topic. So that's what I know. Yes.
So we do this fee for service schedule, what would that money go towards? Would it be for replacement of the salary of the staff person?
It can offset that. It can be held for, because it's program revenue, that would have to be used for that program, because it's leveraging dollars in that way. So in the short term, it could offset, meaning that those interest dollars on the PWEDA fund continue to just accumulate there rather than offsetting salary. We could just add it into the fund and keep track of that in terms of, do we need to? I see a scenario where, not that we need another grant writer, but I see a scenario where there's enough level of use that we actually need some additional administrative support. And we have no way to pay for that except for member dues. So that's a more likely scenario for me, is that we're offsetting some additional administrative support, so that the grant navigator can be doing the front facing things and an admin can be helping with some of the paperwork and back end items. But again, we're not at that level of volume yet. It's more thinking ahead.
Yes, Commissioner Alvarez.
So just a couple questions. I prefer waiting and looking at this and talking to my staff before I would vote on or even voting on a proposed motion. You know, I know the pilot program, I listened to the presentation on that. I was hesitant on that just because I don't see any dollars coming in yet. I mean, well, you can write grants, but the proof is in the pudding if you're actually getting grant funding, and you can always scope out your measurement of if you're even going to, what the chances of you getting that granting ahead of writing the grant, because it is competitive. I agree with you on that. I do see the revenue coming in here, but I'm concerned on this way. I look at it this way: we as a county provide rural county capital funds to the ports, to the cities, for all types of different infrastructure and projects. I know, the Benton City Mayor there is working hard to go ahead and try to get some items done for their city. And so this would just tie up more of the, ties them up to something that maybe they won't be able to go ahead and completely use, depending on how much it's going to cost them, along with Prosser and all the other cities that I'm looking at as well. So I like to look at the fee-based portion a little bit more, run some numbers, look at some financials, and see if it's going to harm those smaller cities. Would they have a little tighter budgets? like I said, because I want to make sure we support them. So that concerns me a little bit about the fee-based thing. I know that we're looking at doing this potentially for growth, and if you're looking at potential another some type of personnel to go ahead and help with this as this grows, but we're not there yet. And so, we have a grant writer there. They have a job. They have, they're working 5 days a week, during this whole time. I want to see some of that funding coming in first and see how that works. And I think we're just getting our car, the horse in front of the car a little bit. I want to look at the numbers, look and see how it's going to affect some of the cities before I would vote on this representing Benton County, and talk to my staff first. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Burton?
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Alvarez. I would like to have some discussion with the staff and just to crunch numbers to see what it would do to our decision-making process in the pursuit of grants.
Yes, Commissioner Baumann. Sorry about that.
Thank you. I would by and large agree with Commissioner Alvarez and Mayor Burton on that, and perhaps a way to adjust it, not yet, but would be a results-based criteria for, if we help somebody get a grant and that was successful, that now that there's results, that there may be, a payment of the effort that it took to help do that. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like. I'm just thoughts starting to develop, but I'm a big advocate of results-based criteria when hiring, when evaluating whatever program it is. There needs to be results-based criteria with that. And so I think we should wait a little bit. I think you got a Mayor McShane.
All right, yes, Mayor McShane?
Yes, thank you. I would agree that I think we need to wait just a little bit more on this element and run through some of those numbers. I think I understand where Commissioner Baumann's coming from, and I think I like that. I think what I could see though is where you have one jurisdiction asking for lots of grant writing and never paying for anything because they're not successful. And so I think it's important that we really think through exactly how this would go. And I do think that this is something that can benefit some of our smaller cities who don't necessarily have the resources. Where the purpose of the grant navigator, right, is that we make people aware and then they can go to work. This would be an extension of that to provide those services, hopefully to some of the smaller cities and organizations that may not have that capacity.
So I am partially in agreement. I think that we should look at it, especially for further. And I know that with the smaller cities, smaller municipalities, that it might be a little bit more of a stretch. However, like what you were saying, it would cost more to have a contract for somebody to be a grant writer rather than paying this cost. I'm not sure how I feel about the results-driven payments, because that isn't always based off of the work by the grant navigator so much as just the competition for the actual grant. Maybe just there are other people that have applied for them that just had more of a need for it, something very big happened, or a legislator just, it caught their fancy that somebody wanted a very specific project, so the work was still put into it. It's just, it wasn't approved because of the competitiveness. I am curious if there is a way to look at it in the more near future for those that are not members, if there is time for something like that. If there isn't, I completely understand, but maybe a trial for those that aren't members to be able to pay using this, that still are at least in our region, just maybe aren't members.
I would be, for that particular one, I would be, having worked in the nonprofit world myself, I feel like that would be a Pandora's box that
That's
we
what I
could
was just realizing.
yet close. I mean, yes, there's just such a massive need.
Yeah.
But to the point about the results-based, there are a couple of pieces. One, that's absolutely true. You know, when I think about even at the jurisdiction level, the number of staff members that submit grant applications that are unsuccessful, it happens all the time, you know. I think there are a lot of bases about whether, you know, those staff people are successful, whether they were able to secure funding or not, is a judgment. And I think this role, is that way as well, you know. The more times you have an opportunity to try and go after funding, the odds of eventually getting something funded, you hope are improved. But many of these programs are hugely competitive, and it's not that the applications were substandard or not good enough, but you know, there's winners and losers all the time. But the amount of time and effort that goes into it is still there. The other potential issue with results-based that I'm definitely up for trying to consider some of these things is that the funds to pay for the result would have to come out of general funds rather than anything that was tied to state or federal funding, because of course you're kind of prohibited from using the dollars in that way. So there would have to be some uniqueness to looking at that. But I would like to say board members have not shared any thoughts, comments, concerns that I hadn't also thought about it in this, which is why I prefaced this report the way I did, that, you know, there are a lot of elements to it, but even just getting a sense from you all about how you feel about it really helps us know how to think about the work.
Commissioner Roberts?
So just one last thing, and I understand that totally. You know, here at the county, and I've been pretty involved in a lot of different grants. I keep on telling it doesn't matter what department it was, so the clerk's office, sheriff's office, coroner's office, planning, whatever. You know, we still look at our level of if we think we are going to be able to get that grant or not, regardless of how competitive it is. We're going to know that. That's just from my experience. As you're doing more and more grants, and you kind of see, you can kind of figure out if you're going to be able to be competitive, if you're going to get a portion of the funding or not when you apply. But I do think, why don't we go ahead, and my recommendation was, I'm not opposed to this, but I would like to look at the numbers, maybe talk to a few mayors, a couple of city managers, talk to my staff and see where they stand on this. Like I said, I want to make sure that we get the most bang for our buck if we're going to have someone in a permanent position, and looking at the funding in here, see how this is going to affect everybody. So like I said, I'm not opposed to it, but you know, I would recommend that we just hold off a little longer, and maybe we readdress this next meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Mayor Grimm?
Thank you. My sentiments are pretty much exactly where Commissioner Alvarez is. I would just like to talk to, yes, especially Director Sarah and some others in staff, and just make sure that this is exactly how we want it, so it'll benefit the most municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Something that I was thinking is going back again to the post-award grant administration fee. I would like to look further at this, especially because I do know that that is a fairly large burden. And I think that it might be something where, if it is offered by BFCOG, Kristen, or whomever, that I think that it would be important. This would be something where I would think it should be fee-based. And I'm wondering if that's something where, in putting the grant together, it would be able to focus on having that fee included in the grant. I know that normally that tends to be the way that it works, but I think that that might be valuable moving forward, just because that is so intensive when it comes to hours and just the specificity of the particular grant.
I think at this point going forward, I mean, if we ever had a jurisdiction that wanted to approach us about supporting administration of a grant, we would approach that the same way we do like our contracts with the PFDs or what have you, where we could consider it on a case-by-case basis, bring it forward with, you know, this is what that would look like. Do we have the capacity or not? So whether we formally adopted a program or not, that's something we would still just openly consider if, you know, if it came about.
So it's not currently an obligation, for the grant navigator?
Yeah.
Yes, I think,
I think results-based criteria is important. I understand what you said about this is, it's a little tricky, I understand that, but also we don't want to set up a program that has no way to measure its, you know, the results that it can attain. And so something like this, we do need to kind of work our way through it. I think that lots of comments about talking with the experts that, you know, that work in our various jurisdictions about how could this work?
Yeah.
Because a thought that I had that we might evaluate is what if it was a percentage of the grant size, something, or, you know, you can get a grant for $500 to replace a flagpole versus, you know, $5 million for something, and, you know, to evaluate them the same isn't hardly fair, but it also does take a similar amount of time to go through it. So yeah, I think there's opportunity for some conversations with experts and maybe bring it back. Thanks.
right, yes, Mayor Burton?
The grant, I believe we're talking about with Benton City, when we received the notice that they were accepting it, the time window was very, very short. It was a very complex grant. It still took an immense amount of time of staff time, probably 2 staff persons, probably put 20 hours a week on it. And you know, these are things that probably have to be looked at. You know, in a normal situation, we probably would not have been able to put that grant request together without assistance from BFCOG.
Right, Commissioner Novakovich?
Well, just a couple of comments. We talked about fee for services for a long time at the Council of Governments, and I think I'm totally in favor of it, but I'm kind of wondering about basing it on success of the grant, and I understand that. But the cost to the Council of Governments is going to be the same, whether the grant's achieved or not. So how do you cover those expenses? So I totally agree with the fee for services thing, but I'm kind of wondering if putting together a questionnaire that went out to the jurisdictions and said, would you be willing to pay on a fee for services for these types of services, and see what they say? I mean, if nobody's interested, and the comments were made about the small jurisdictions who don't have the staff, I can see where it'd be a real benefit to them. And perhaps the fee for services is set up to where there's a minimal fee that covers the expense to the COG initially, and then possibly part of the grant could pay for the rest of it if it's put in there and the grant's successful. There could be a blend of it, but I think first of all, you've got to decide if the jurisdiction would even accept the fee for services.
I'll definitely agree with what Commissioner Novakovich said, and I will also agree with some of what Commissioner Baumann said. I agree that there should be some goalpost of some type. Maybe not the grant being approved, but at least like the number of grants being submitted, the amount of time that it would take for them to be submitted based off of maybe a percentage of how much it costs, the complexity. There is a way to measure success, and it isn't always approval of the grant. There's so many parts along the way. But I think that with what Commissioner Novakovich said, absolutely, it's gonna have to be a pretty big conversation within the directors, and for at least West Richland, the directors and the mayor, to make sure that it's something that they would be comfortable with doing if it would be cost effective.
We do have some information about average rates of success so that we can have at least a point of comparison. So as everyone's acknowledged, you know, these are fairly competitive processes. I'm seeing here from Grant Watch that state grants have an average success rate of about 25%, and federal grants have an average success rate of as low as 5%. So in terms of, you know, achieving the grant and comparing it to what national averages are, I think some more time would be helpful for that. Yes.
So Michelle,
Yes.
Just listen to this conversation. I think somebody from the outside, if they were to hear that the
COG spent $400,000 on grant assistance and didn't win one grant, that would be a yellow flag. But it doesn't seem like it is a yellow flag with you. Can you explain a little bit more why it's not a yellow flag that we haven't won one grant?
Sure. Well, I think part of that is that, again, looking at the scale, and 400 is probably inflated. 200 to 2,000 is the funding that we know is available, but by the time you have a fully loaded staff position, not including the overhead, you're looking at, you're looking at about 160, so a little less than 400 to be fair, for 2 years.
Okay.
But I think part of that is that in a pilot, we started from nothing. We had no program, no training, no contacts, no communication method, none of that. So I would say the better part of the first year was just, how do we figure out how to do this? How does it work? How do we identify the programs? Who are we supposed to be communicating with inside each of the governments? Because it's not like you're talking to one person in one department. There are hundreds of grants that come out, and they all have specialties. So even just parsing through which of those might be applicable to anybody that we're working with, who has projects that might be applicable. All of the staff people inside the governments are busy as well. So it's not as if this staff position is sitting waiting for someone to call them. They're proactively reaching out to say, hey, there's this opportunity, and I think I'm aware that you have this project that might be looking for some money. Do you want to have a conversation? So there's a lot of staff time and effort that goes into just making that initial contact and building some trust. And so I would say, looking at a 2-year pilot, it's not surprising to me that we have not yet had one hit, really, when you think about it, because it does take time. So yeah, that would be my justification, is that with any new program, it just takes a while to get all the gears going.
Commissioner Alvarez?
Just real quick, so I know we're kind of going in circles a little bit, and we need to move on. So my recommendation, once again, I like Skip's idea of maybe putting out some staff creating some type of questionnaire, putting it out to the city managers, mayors, and the counties. Let us go ahead and respond back on that. That gives us some time to go ahead and look at the financials. I want to make sure there's not that big of an impact to the smaller cities that I work within the county. And let's go with that. I mean, that would be my main recommendation right there, because I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to vote for the proposed motion as it is right now until we get some clarity and I can get some more information on it. And that's nothing against it about doing it. I just like to go ahead and get a little bit more educated and talk to staff and talk to the individual mayors and city managers. So that would be my recommendation, like Skip's idea of staff putting potentially a questionnaire out with the information on it, getting it out to everybody, and then we can go ahead and relook at that either as next meeting, or staff provides the questionnaire to us. Next meeting, we review it, see if we like it, and then we push it out then. But that would be probably, to me, a good recommendation to move forward.
Do we have a consensus that we would like to table this particular fee schedule item, or do we have any interest in the proposed motion?
We should probably move to table it to the next meeting. So I'll move to table this to the next meeting after survey or some sort of communication has been presented to the different municipalities that are members.
There's a motion to table this item. Second?
I'll second. Oh,
I'm good.
All right, was that a second from Mayor Grimm?
Sure was. Thank you.
All right, okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to table this item at this time. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed to tabling this item? All right, thank you. Motion to table passes.
Thank you.
And that was-
I appreciate everybody's input. Thank you.
This motion specifically was to table it along with having communication sent out to the member municipalities. just to,
Oh, thank you.
because that was, yeah,
Part of your motion.
that was part of my motion.
They did reflect that, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I'm moving on to our reports, starting with Aaron.
So, given the fact that it is 11:45, and we are just starting reports, I would just ask that staff be judicious, and if there's anything that doesn't need a verbal update in the meeting, because the report was in the packet, and this is just informational, that we can just skip on
Keep it
along.
brief, all right?
I will be very brief. This is your monthly update on your obligation authority status. I will say, since we have met last, we've had a number of projects obligate. We are about $1 million to meet our obligation authority target. Woo, good job, everybody. One thing I just want to draw your attention to, so what you see in italics. So that is the Benton City project of the Riverfront Park Trail, and then the Benton County project. Those have received 1-year passes. They have not obligated yet. If they do not obligate their projects this year, their projects will lose their funding. So Benton City and Benton County, please obligate your projects. I will be very quick with this. We had a summer planning academy over the last week, or the beginning of July, excuse me. And students had an opportunity to work on a real world planning project of redeveloping the old city hall for the city of Richland. They participated in a walking tour, and then site visits with city staff. They heard from a guest speaker. They engaged with urban planning through interactive games. They got to present their idea to community members, city staff, and elected officials at an open house. So this was the July 7th, 8th, and 9th. So day 1 was understanding planning and a game, walking tour and site visit. And then day 3 was the guest speaker and mock presentations. And then Wednesday was the SPA open house. So this is the groups of the students presenting their ideas, which they're boards are out in the foyer if you want to look at those. It was really cool to interact with these students, and they definitely gave off an energy that was very palpable when they entered the room of just trying to soak up as much as possible. So it was really fun, and just a massive shout out and kudos to Elizabeth Garcia. This was her envisioning of this entire program, so good job, Lizzie.
Yeah, great. We'd love to see this expand, the opportunity that these kids have to think about real world problems in their communities and to collaborate on solutions. I thought is just fantastic.
We don't want to do, City of Richland's great. Nothing against Todd. We did Richland this year. We want to do a different city next year. So if you have a specific interest, start to put that in Lizzie's ear sooner than. Quick update. Matt, we had a budget exercise for the transportation for our RTP. It wrapped up. We'll be reporting back next month on it. You can come find us at the August 7th farmers market. We'll have that information then, and then we'll have it at the board meeting the next week. Thank you to all the jurisdictions that have submitted their RTP projects and updated their land use. I'm still bugging some jurisdictions to submit their projects, so just a heads up on that. And a quick reminder, if your project is not in the regional transportation plan, you cannot receive federal funds. Or I will put it, you should not be able to receive federal funds. We're working with Spotted Fox, and we're in the final stages of wrapping up our regional transportation plan video. This video is explaining the importance of transportation to our region, and then highlighting what the regional transportation plan does. And then there'll also be some short videos that are put out about what the COG does. During my duration here, and I'd even say going back farther, I have not found anything about the COG releasing any promotional or educational videos about any of our planning materials or what we do. So this is the first time we're doing this, so this will be very cool. Should be wrapped up in the next 2 weeks, so we will have this for you at the August meeting. And just a special thank you to Council Member Rand for taking part in the video, and then to one of our TAC Vice Chair, Kevin Slager from BFT, for also being in it. Last but not least, we have two new planners here on the you'll see on the video to the left. First is Grace Alston. She is a new regional planner, just graduated from Portland State University in June. She has extensive experience with GIS and has already been diving deep into WashDOT's crash data. She's a special interest in transportation planning and economic development, but outside of planning, Grace is a professional ultimate frisbee player for the Oregon Onyx.
Yeah.
We have a transportation planning intern, Zoe Beckley, also just graduated from Portland State. So we have 3 Portland State alumni now on staff, and we have 3 Eastern Washington alumni on staff. With her master's in urban and regional planning, Zoe has prior experience working in the MPO realm, which is great. And she's really excited about how planning is done in the Tri-Cities, specifically in the more rural portions and getting more people involved in the planning process. Outside of planning, Zoe's a big fan of the Portland Thorns. That is all that I have.
All right, thank you, Erin. And Elizabeth.
I think we're skipping this one. Yeah, I was gonna say, given for time, I think we can, I mean, you're happy to do a quick run through. There's been a lot of effort put onto the RTP.
I can make it quick. I guess I may try. I timed myself. It was 8 minutes, so we'll make it even quicker. Okay, so this is just the focus group analysis. So quick overview. The focus groups for the RTP, the Regional Transportation Plan, is really just understanding people's transportation experiences and the priorities beyond what was really captured in that survey. So just really round truthing, what we found. So we had 10 focus groups. We had 5 different perspectives. We broke that up by type and geographic. So youth, rural, Richland, and West Richland combined into one, Kennewick and Pasco. We gave to a lot of community members, 34. These were held in the neighborhood. So slide please. So round 1 for our focus groups was again ground truthing the survey. So really understanding what their experiences and needs were. And then our focus group round 2 was really about that budget exercise that was released on Social Pinpoint. So having them look at those 50 real transportation projects, having that assumed budget of the $500, and then collaboratively they get to decide what would they choose to prioritize as investment for transportation funds. So what we heard, safety was still a really big consistent theme across all of the focus groups. I have some quotes up there. A rural person said that they can't trust other drivers. A Pasco one said, I should not worry about my safety while walking on the street. It's my right to walk through my town. Transportation choice, so really expanding transportation options, including transit, carpooling, regional rail. A lot of them rely on driving, so just looking at all their alternatives. A quote from a youth participant was, we need updated bike infrastructure to eliminate bike and vehicle conflicts and change the travel patterns in the future. That sounds so smart for a youth participant, but they did say that, so it was kind of cool. Connectivity, so really looking at the need for like better transportation and connectivity in a network, so closing gaps in sidewalks, bike routes, improving those access between the cities. We had a Richland, West Richland focus group participants say that distance to bus stops is bad. Things are very far away for someone who's disabled and has issues walking. Infrastructure, so that was mainly about improving the walking and biking infrastructure. So bike lanes, continuous sidewalks, better connections. We had a county focus group member say that paint is not infrastructure. In case you didn't know, paint is not infrastructure. We had another kind of focus group participant say that the Tri-Cities grew fast for its infrastructure, which kind of is a good tie into the growth. So a lot of participants really expressed concern that regional growth is outpacing transportation infrastructure improvements. I feel like I'm speaking in tongue ties. So they really encourage a lot of regional leaders to plan ahead and to really look at future growth and coordinate that transportation planning across all of the jurisdictions. So we had a Pasco member saying, we are one community and need to think of everyone. Let's plan ahead. Next slide, please. So for the budget exercise, some of those key takeaways included transportation is really hard. Like the funding for it requires a lot of trade-offs. So they had a lot of empathy for people who are in the decision-making place to look at those competing priorities leading to funding. Safety, accessibility, and regional connectivity were still those core transportation priorities. That was a consistent theme. They all did approach the exercise a little bit differently depending on what their experiences were or their familiarity with the region. Some individuals had never even left like Kennewick and they had no idea what affected Pasco. So it did kind of change the nuances of the group. And the multimodal transportation options were still broadly valued, though they did kind of differ in how they chose to prioritize those investments. A youth focus group participant said, small city projects are so expensive. A Kennewick one said, we wanted to prioritize all the railroad crossings. That was a very hot topic for them. Richland, West Richland, they said there were expensive projects that sounded great, but we had to justify them. So again, they kind of had to look at what were the transportation trade-offs there. Pasco focus group said that some projects affect other projects. It's hard to pick one and not to the others. And that was kind of in conversation of, if you pick one, this is going to affect the other. So how do you choose which one to prioritize? And then we had a rural focus group participant say that one city would make funding decisions easier. Yeah, I keep going. Community priority. So the participants consistently prioritize projects that really address safety concerns, expand that multimodal transportation, and really provide benefits to the broader region. Interestingly enough, the most selected project, which was actually selected by every single focus group, was the West Pasco Transit Center. So happened to transit. There were some other frequently discussed projects, and I will just say that will be in our final analysis report, so you can kind of review like what were those discussed projects. Next slide, please. Each of the communities had really unique perspectives. Richland, West Richland had a lot of conversations about transit and congestion, as well as what long-term planning looked like. Kennewick talked a lot about those railroad crossing bridges and really how those related to safety. Rural was about rural access and really having just better information, including data. They really cared about having just that better backed data decision making, I guess. Youth, it was about active transportation choices, and really were concerned about being able to have connectivity to different places. They talked a lot about the airports, which was interesting. And then Pasco talked a lot about regional connectivity and having people focused design. So really looking at, instead of planning for cars, planning for people. Next slide, please. So some key takeaways. The input really we received from these focus groups reinforces the direction of the RTP. I think what's interesting is the goals that the board adopted are also goals that the community also sees as a priority. So safety is that community's highest priority across all the modes. They really wanted proactive planning that keeps pace with regional growth. They emphasized having stronger connections between all of those community destinations. They wanted reliable access to any destination, regardless of what their transportation choice was. They support expanding safe transportation options, and they also value transparent, balanced decisions that were supported by community input and data. And with that, that is my last slide. But if you have questions, I'm open to them. Or the focus group analysis will also kind of have some more information about that.
Are there more focus groups planned in the future, or?
This is we do not have any other focus groups planned, but we will have more community engagement as the plan progresses. But it won't be focus groups specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, we're gonna breeze through this part. Just quickly on the loan closeout, we did transition the legacy revolving loans to Tri-County Economic Development. So we are down to one loan under our EDA CARES program. We're waiting on the EDA to give us the final authorization to transfer that program to Tri-County. It has been approved out of committee at EDA, so we're really just waiting for the circulation of the paperwork, and I expect that by the end of September, only because we had a report that should have been due at that time, and they said, don't worry about it. So I'm assuming we're gonna have it done by then. So we are almost out of the revolving loan fund business. Kristen, I'm going to skip over our Grant Navigator report simply because we have talked a lot of Grant Navigator today, and you get this report every month. Brownfields. Lizzie has been eminently busy with brownfield projects. This second grant has been really active with all kinds of phase 1s, phase 2s, regulated building materials activities, and inventories in planning. Again, we update on this pretty regularly, so we'll keep you in the loop. Lots of administrative communication as well. All right, and for me, just my report, in addition to Grace and Zoe, we also have a summer records intern, Jackson Kinsley. Jackson will be a junior at Southbridge High School. He is a records management savant. This is his third summer working as a summer intern on records. He's worked with City of Richland and City of Pasco, and he'll be working for us 3 days a week to help us get our records retention program up and running and cleaned up. It blows my mind. He is amazing. Our audit is now underway for 2025. We are in the calendar year 2026. We're doing 2025's audit, but this includes our 3-year accountability audit. We did release an RFP seeking information about office furniture. Very clearly understood in that RFP that we have not confirmed a spending budget, and the purpose of the RFP is really to figure out how much would it cost us to even consider doing something. Once we know that, we'll come and have some conversation with you all about that. We've had a regional benefits comparison that the draft is complete, and now we're just ground truthing the information with the jurisdictions to make sure that all of our data is correct before we release it. We've had 6 public records requests this year. Every month we've had a new one. That's a record. I think our banner year before this year was 2. So Lacey has had to put a significant amount of time into just responding to those. We did have our first sit-down annual strategic meetings with Richland and Kennewick. Pasco is scheduled for August. Those have been very valuable for just everybody to learn on what's our focuses, how our staff's communicating, and what are opportunities that we can be collaborating on. Erin and I did present at the Chamber's Regional Advocacy Roundtable last month about traffic transit and tomorrow with good feedback. And Lizzie and I did a presentation to the city of Mesa about brownfields and some opportunities for their city. The Benton County Public Facilities District has actually taken an inordinate amount of time over the last 2 months as we've been helping them to fill board openings. That process is now, we're just waiting for the final word from the county commissioners. We did also host a quick meeting with staff from Moses Lake who are considering setting up a public facilities district, and they came and met with all of the districts here to get some information. We did nominate the COG for an AMPO Excellence Award. We were not selected. There were 19 submissions for that award nationally, so we weren't sad that was really very competitive. I did serve as the awards committee chair. I did not judge our category, but as such, I'm serving as the master of ceremonies for the awards presentation at the national conference in September, which, as you know, Erin and Daisy are going to be presenting at the conference for one of the breakouts. And I am on the ballot for election for the AMPO Board of Directors. Our executive committee blessed my submission for consideration for that. So again, that voting will take place in August, and we'll find out in September if that's something that I will be doing. The EDA Partnership Planning Grant, the old grant is now closed out. The new grant, we are still waiting. Also anticipating by September 30, EDA's process has just been really backed up. We've been monitoring if there's any cash flow impacts for the fact that we have not received money out of that program since the first of the year. So far, we're doing fine. And then, of course, we already talked about the grant. Daisy has been with us 3 years. She just had her anniversary. Tanner's been with us 7 years. We celebrated that. And Kristen's anniversary will be next week for 2 years. And a lovely picture of our team. We did our quarterly wellness activity. We learned how to play pickball, which was highly entertaining and really reflective of those of us who are more competitive than others, and those of us that are more athletic than others. So it was a fun time. All right, that's it.
And we have do we have any new business for this meeting?
None that I'm aware.
And we'll take voluntary updates. If any member here would like to share any updates from their local jurisdiction, please do. Yes,
Really fast, in March, we held the Federal Partners Coalition
at the Happel Center. And that has really produced some neat results. That has grown across the United States, and they approached us and asked if we would do that again. So we're planning to host that again in 2027 springtime. We're hoping to get a date on the calendar sooner rather than later. That will be primarily, the prime partner with that is the U.S. Department of Ag Rural Development Program. And they are coming here at the end of this month, that we're sitting down, collaborating a little bit, trying to figure that out. So, yeah, that's grown, and look forward to that next year.
Great, thank you. Yes.
I'll just say that SR 224 is chugging right along. More work is being done on that. We have one circle done. We've got another circles in process, and then of course the walking, biking trail that's going to be alongside of that is getting work done. Other than that, I guess just in general, I'd like to say my condolences to all of the municipalities that are currently dealing with folks that are either very for or very much against data centers, because that has become a massive thing. And I'm wondering if we would be able to have maybe a regional conversation about data centers, because just like a lot of folks have been saying, it isn't something that will just affect the individual municipality where it's going to be in. It is going to have regional effect wherever it goes, even though that specific municipality is going to have the regulations over it. If the boundaries are not just within us. So I'd be curious to have a regional discussion.
Great, that seems like an appropriate regional conversation. Yes.
Okay, I just want to thank the COG for placing the flag in the correct position.
Yes.
And for putting the Pledge of Allegiance on the agenda, because when we stand and say the pledge, we're united as Americans, and there's so many things that work to divide us right now, so it's really nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or reports back?
Just those comments, the Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce has a data center workshop on Monday at 10:30. So they're gonna have 3 very well recognized speakers to speak on the pros and cons of data centers. So yeah, the Tri-City Chamber is sponsoring a workshop on this very topic
And where is that being held?
at the Visit Tri-Cities
Visit Tri-Cities
Yeah.
in Kennewick.
in Kennewick in the Boardroom. Yep.
All right.
I believe they will have a virtual option for
Good.
that as well. I think I got it on my calendar. If you'd like, I can forward
Yeah.
it to you.
That would be
You
great.
see at 10 o'clock on.
10:30. 10:30 till noon.
Workshop or
It's their regional roundtable. I call it the regional roundtable. They bring in speakers every month. Kind of like Michelle was a speaker last month.
thank you.
Thanks for that information. Does anybody else have a comment before we adjourn? And I just wanted to thank everybody as well for their thoughtful input and good conversation. We really appreciate everybody's involvement and willingness to speak up and ask questions. All right, we'll go ahead and adjourn. The time is 12:07.